back to my channel. My name is Hannah and today we're going to be going over my God tier books. These are my Roman Empire 6-star books, however you want to refer to them as. That's what these are. And I love watching these videos because it's just so fun to see the different books that each person can have that just really sticks in their brain and resonates with them, and like for what reasons. And I've always wanted to film one, but I never really seemed to have enough books that I felt fit this category until recently, actually. So I finally was like, you know what, I really want to film this and talk about some of these. I'm sure that some of you can guess what some of them are, but we're just going to jump right into it. In no particular order, we're going to start off with The Book Thief. This is very different from the rest of the books in this stack. This is my only historical fiction in it, and it's just one of those books that is really hard for me to explain why I love it so much. And it's set in 1939 in Nazi Germany, and the story follows this little girl named Liesel Memminger, and her life is just completely turned upside down when her mother dies and she goes to live with this foster family in Germany. So she has to sort of reacclimate to living with an entire new family, the new way that everything's done, and then of course there's the rise of Hitler and the Nazi movement, and you're seeing this from the eyes of a little girl, which makes it so much more, it humanizes it a lot more, it humanizes the experience a lot more, because you're getting it from a child who's questioning everything and is like, I just don't understand what's going on with this, and like there's more of the human side of it where she just is empathetic towards everybody and wants to care about people, and she doesn't understand the political side of it. So you get a lot of different perspective, I feel, because of that. Added to that is the fact that her foster family does end up actually hiding a Jew in their basement. It's somebody that was like a family friend, so they feel obligated to do this. So that even sort of opens things up a little bit more for her, because now she's seeing somebody that the movement is saying is a terrible person and that needs to be turned in and everything, and she's like, but he's teaching me to read and write, and it's just beautiful. The relationship is beautiful. Seeing it through the eyes of this little girl is beautiful. The other part that I really love about this is that the narrator in the story is actually Death, which I think is just adds another element to this that is really unique. And the things that he would say are just so beautiful and poetic and lyrical. And there's a couple different quotes in here that I've thought about so many different times. At one point he's talking about how humans will persevere and they'll stagger on with tears streaming down their face, and he's like, I'm haunted by humans. And it's like, okay, picturing Death being haunted by humans, like that's something. I don't know. It's really hard for me to explain, but if you've read it, you probably will understand, hopefully. I've read it a couple times and still revert to this if somebody asks what one of my favorite books is. Then, in a completely different direction, like I said, we have the Boys of Tommen series. I haven't read the most recent one yet because I just don't know if I'm ready for that much emotional damage, but I already know from reading the first 5 books that this is a series that's going to stick with me forever. I didn't expect to be so emotionally attached to high school students that live in Ireland that aren't real. Like, let's be honest, like, it's just crazy how you can get so attached to fictional characters. But there's something about these stories and everything that they go through, and it's more than just high school drama or like a sports romance. Like, yeah, there's sports aspects in here, but like these books really are just so much about perseverance and trauma and working through the hard times, and what resilience looks like, what bravery looks like, what strength looks like, what true family outside of your bloodline looks like. Like, it's beautiful, and I can't express enough how much I adore this series. Then we have the Mind F series. I know everybody talks about this, and everybody that doesn't read dark romance is like, I'm not gonna read that because it's a dark romance. Listen, it's not a dark romance in that way. Yeah, there's some spicy scenes, but really there's not that many in comparison to most. They're not really all that like kinky. There's not like any of that aspect. it's a dark romance because of the underlying story behind the main female character. So this follows Lana and her quest to sort of right some wrongs that have happened in her past, and you know from the jump that she is a serial killer, that she is killing all of these different men. What you don't know is why she's killing these different men. And she ends up in a relationship with the FBI agent that is supposed to be investigating all of the crimes that she's committing. So that just adds like a really fun twist to it. But what's really gotten me through all this is just the representation of the horror that some people in this world go through and have to survive, and that everybody just tells them to move past, and kind of looks at it where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna be stronger because of this, but we're not forgiving, and we're certainly not forgetting, and we're gonna freaking do something about it. And I love that. Is it illegal? Yes. Am I still supporting it? I mean, in a fictional way, yes. Like, it's just, it was heartbreaking when you finally figured out what went on in her past and the way that everything unfolded, and seeing her rebuild herself and come up with this whole plot. Like, it's incredible. I couldn't get enough of it. I loved it. Is the writing the best thing ever? No, it's not. But like, it's just easy to take in. It's fast paced, and the way that she worked the plot and slowly made the reveals, that was beautifully, beautifully done. So, love that series so much. Actually really want to do a reread of it, and it hasn't even been that long since I read it. Then we have another series that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, and that's the Hunger Games series. Now, I adore the main series as a whole. It was something that I connected to a lot when I was in high school, and just really, really loved, and I couldn't even explain really well why. I just did. But I do think that if I had to pick a book out of the series that was actually like the god tier book and not the entirety of the series, it would be Sunrise on the Reaping. I sobbed so many times when I was reading this, and I feel like it sort of took all of the other books and brought them together in a way that really just encapsulated everything. Like all of the vibes with the games aspect, and then the rebellion aspect. It put all these characters together. You got to see almost everybody in this in one way or another, which I really liked. And it also just has that important theme behind it of falling for propaganda and implicit submission and what that looks like, and also just masterfully works together the way that a rebellion works, and how it's not instantaneous, it's not one person, but that person can be the spark that sort of lights the fire that will someday hopefully take root. And it just, I couldn't get over the way that this was written and the way that it tied into everything in the series. And to have that call back to a series that I really loved in high school and still really enjoy, yeah, it couldn't not be on this list. Then we have the One Dark Window duology. I kind of started reading gothic romance last year. Didn't really get, or gothic fantasy, gothic romance, didn't get too heavily into it until I read this. And then I was like, this is beautiful. The atmosphere in this, the way that the characters were written, the magic system, like, it's just something so hauntingly beautiful, and I adored every minute of it. Like, I loved this first book. The second book took it a little bit further, added in some new characters, or like point of views of new characters that I actually really liked and didn't think that I needed to see. But once I did, I was like, oh, I really like this. So this follows a young woman who has a nightmare in her head, and it's because she picked up like this, I'm going to call it a tarot card, when she was younger, and when she did, she took in the nightmare that was a part of the card. And he sort of lived with her for her entire life. There's other cards that everybody can try and take possession of, and when they do, they get certain powers. But every time you use one, you have to give something in return. So it's kind of dangerous to be using these two. In the background of everything, there's this fog that envelops their town, and they're trying to figure out how to get rid of this. And everybody thinks if you get all the tarot cards together, maybe they can get rid of it. And the main female character, she wants all the tarot cards together because she's hoping that she can get rid of the nightmare that's living in her head and talks to her, and just some of the weird stuff that's happening. Like I said, I just think that the magic system in here was so well done. I thought the pacing, the writing style was beautiful, and just the way this plot unfolded and developed was incredible. I loved every second of these books. Then We have House of Bane and Blood. This is a duology currently. I think that she's working on some other books within this universe, which I can't wait for. I have so many different copies of this book. And I'm still planning on ordering the new traditionally published ones when those come out because it's a God tier book. I need them. This is more of like an urban fantasy set in a post-industrial setting where the railroad is very prominent and a huge part of the economy, and it's like it follows two rival families, one of whom sort of owns the railroad, but they're in bankruptcy because of the railroad, and then the other one is in charge of Remnant Row, and he is actually like a remnant, which means that he has elemental powers, which is super fun. And he has his own problems where people are dying in Remnant Row and he's not really sure what's going on. He believes that marrying Camilla is going to help him is going to help him sort of solve this problem, give him some of the clout that he needs to get this addressed. Camilla thinks that marrying Nico is going to give her the money that she needs to help save her family's railroad. So it's a sort of forced marriage, arranged marriage between the two of them. So you get all of that tension and angst between the marriage, and I love seeing them sort of work through all of that and the way their relationship progresses and develops. But also the mystery behind Remnant Row, the remnants themselves with their powers and everything. I loved the way that that took place. I don't want to say too much about that because it would spoil things, but like really enjoyed this. I think about this all the time. It's definitely time for a reread of these. Then I have two that kind of tie together. First, we have the Harry Potter series. This is obviously one of my longest standing God tier series. I didn't read this until high school, I think. I think it was high school. Maybe even after that. I think I watched some movies in high school and then I read these after because my mom wasn't very huge into sort of witchcraft and sorcery and all that stuff. And then eventually she was like, okay, fine, like you're old enough to know this doesn't exist. If you want to read it, go ahead. So I was like, okay, great, reading it, because like I've always loved the idea of magic and just things being a little bit more romantic and magical than they are in the real world. You know, the reason that everybody loves reading fantasy, pretty much. I don't know what it is about this series that just captivated me so much, but I know I'm not the only one, because like this is inspired so much, and I don't think the author ever expected it to go that far, where there's theme parks after it and rides and entire stories about Harry Potter and the world and entire fan fictions and everything. Like this has inspired so many different people, and so many books have been inspired off of this, like follows some similar concepts and stuff. I don't know. I love this series so much, and yeah, that's probably never going to change. In a slight connection to that, we have Manigault. This is my only book on here that is a fan fiction. Technically, it's being traditionally published. It's going to be released sometime later this year. It's called Alchemized. I'm definitely going to read that, see what it looks like in comparison to this. But this in and of itself is always going to be a God tier book for me. It's like 1,000 pages. It's long, it's massive, but I ate this up. Like, I really loved it. It's set after all of the events in the Harry Potter series, the original one, and it sort of twists the way that ends. Like, it doesn't end the same. The war and everything doesn't end the same. So they're actually still fighting in this. And in this world, it sort of follows Hermione, who was a healer, and she did that because she knew nobody else was going to be a healer. Everybody wanted to fight, and she said, well, somebody needs to actually like be able to sew you guys back together. Let's think through this here. So that's what she does in this world, and eventually she ends up being captured, and she's given to Draco as a prisoner. And as part of that prisoner status, she is actually supposed to be like his, how do I want to phrase this? Voldemort's sort of doing a breeding program. We're just going to call it what it is. That's what it is. With some of these prisoners that he has captured, and that's what she is to Draco. She is supposed to be giving him an heir, whether she wants to or not. So there's some very graphic scenes in here. Definitely very Handmaid's Tale inspired as well. And while she's with Draco, he's supposed to be like trying to figure out what's going on in her head. She has a lot of things blocked off, and they can't get in her head to figure out what everything is. So he's supposed to be helping to expose all of that. So follows that, there's a massive chunk that then goes back in time, so that you can sort of figure out what was going on with her. I can't explain any more of the plot without giving stuff away. I just really felt so strongly for Hermione specifically in this book, and then even for Draco with the way that he's presented in here, and the tough choices that he had to make, the tough choices that Hermione had to make, and the concept of like, what's too much to win? Do we get to keep our humanity, or do we get to win? Are the good people always going to win? And if they do, is it because they stayed good, or because they were willing to do some things that kind of cross the line in order, like, what ends justify the means, kind of. And it looks at that, it explores that, and I really liked that reality of it, because it's something that, it's reality. Like, do we want the bad people to continue controlling everything for years and years and years because the good guys win in the end? They have to. We have to win, right? Like, so we're just going to stay good, or are we going to end this earlier by doing one or two things that aren't great? And it's that moral dilemma that people would have to face in a situation like this, and I really loved that, and I loved seeing the romance between Draco and Hermione. Yes, this is a Draco-Hermione fanfiction, normally not one that I would necessarily ship reading the original series, but in this book I understood it, and I was actually quite obsessed with it by the time that I was done. So yeah, this is just a beautiful, stunning book, probably one that I'm going to get a tattoo for, actually, because I loved it that much. So yeah. And lastly, we have one that I didn't think was a god tier until I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and that's Till Death. This is a more recent release. It's like a gothic fantasy again, and it follows this young woman who is actually Death's maiden. Is that what they call them? Yeah, it's Death's maiden. So there's supposed to be two maidens in this world, Death's and Life's. There is the Death Maiden, who is actually a princess, and nobody has seen the Life Maiden. So everybody is concerned that, like, the Life God is just, she's gone. She's out of the picture. Nobody knows why. And the princess is tied to Death and pretty much his assassin. If he says to go kill somebody, she goes and kills them. Nobody else can really die in this world until they reach a certain age, unless she comes for them and follows through with what she's told. And she doesn't really have a choice. Eventually she ends up accidentally marrying a man who is tied to this magical burlesque show. And I know that sounds so confusing, because you're like, you know, what? But there's this magical burlesque show where this man with a lot of power sort of collects people and gives them things that they want, and then ties them to his show, and they're indebted to him mostly for life, and they have no choice but to perform in the show and do what he wants. So she is now tied to this show because of her husband, and pretty much tied to a man that she's been trying to avoid, because he's been trying to trap her in a servitude to him, and she's not really sure how to get out of it. The way that the relationship unfolded in here, the way that the world worked with the magic system, and her trying to figure out her powers, figure out where the Life Maiden is because she thinks maybe that can help save her, just all of it was beautiful and really atmospheric. Again, like, that's one of the things I love about well done gothic fantasy books. You could just picture everything. I listened to the audiobook for this, and it had a violin playing in some of the scenes because the main male character, he plays the violin. So you had that in some of it, which just added another layer to it, and I really loved it. And I just felt myself being moved to tears a couple times throughout this story, and I couldn't even explain why. But if something is able to evoke that much feeling for me, I feel like it needs to be a god tier book. So that is why this one is on the list. And I know that I said that was the last one in this video. Technically it's the last one on the list officially, but I do have actually I have 3 honorable mentions that I think are going to be god tier. I just need to get through the rest of the series before I make that ultimate decision. And the first one is actually going to be a little bit of a spoiler for my June wrap-up, and that's Magnolia Parks. I've only read the first one, but I completely understand why people get wrapped up in this, and I just really loved the characters, and there was something about this that moved me to tears a couple times, and the concept of how many loves you get a lifetime, and just being so attached to somebody that you can't help but continue to find yourself in their orbit even though you know it's not good or healthy for you. This one wasn't quite at god tier, but I feel like the whole series is probably going to going to be, because I heard they just get even more emotionally investing as you go through the books. So that one is an honorable mention. Another one is going to be the Zodiac Academy series. The first book was 5 stars. Second book was 4.5. I think as a whole, this series could probably be in this list just because it's so unique and so creative. I really, really enjoy the way that magic functions in this, the academic setting. So far, I'm kind of really enjoying the bits of some of the romances that we're getting. Like, those are really, like, Professor Orion. Yeah. If you've read this, I don't really need to say too much more beyond that, but I really like it. Again, this isn't one that you're gonna say, like, the writing is the most masterfully done in the world, but the world that they create is super fun and unique, and just, like, you get obsessed with it. Or at least I got obsessed with it. And then another honorable mention, the last one, is the Windy City series. I've only read the first 2. Mile High, I think, was like a 4-star, and then the second one is The Right Move. That was a 5-star read for me. I really, really loved that book. Partially, I think, because of the time that I read it during, but I love the representation of just the men that she creates and the way that they are with their girlfriends, and sort of just, I don't know, they're good portrayals of what great boyfriends should be like, in my opinion, of the first 2 that I've read. So I think once I finish the series, it's probably going to be a God tier series, because everybody else seems to love each next book even more than the previous one. So we'll see. I don't really know, but those are all of my God tier books / series. I kind of cheat because I'll put like entire series in there, but I feel like, you know, like, that makes sense, because looking at them collectively, you're like, wow, this entire thing has left an imprint on me. And that's one of the incredible things about reading, is just the way that fictional worlds can leave an imprint on you and evoke so much feeling and make you think and teach you new life lessons and everything. And yeah, anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling now. Let me know if any of these are some of your God tier books, and if they aren't, what are some of yours? Because if they're ones I haven't read yet, I would certainly love to read them and experience them and see if I get the same feelings out of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye.